Bought an iPad Pro recently? You're going to need some accessories. Welcome back to Mark Ellis Reviews. Thank you as always for subscribing, and if you haven't, the button's just down there. I'm a massive fan of the iPad Pro, always have been. Bought the first version, bought the 2018 version behind me. Haven't bought the M1 version yet. I've had lots to say about that already. I'll link to a video above where I talk about it being Apple's most boring release ever. I'm hoping that's going to change at WWDC, which is coming very, very soon. However, despite that, I am using my iPad Pro more regularly at the moment. I've just started using it for photo editing, which is quite exciting. But one of the best things about the iPad, the thing that I've always loved about the iPad, particularly the Pro, is the stuff that you can add to it to make it more useful. So in today's video, I'm going to show you 5 of my favorite iPad Pro accessories. A lot of them are actually available for the other iPads, but I'll concentrate on the iPad Pro today. The Apple Pencil. This is the current version. I had the first version as well. That one was a bit silly. You had to take the top off and plug it into your iPad to charge it. It was a bit too long, very round. It rolled off everything, shiny, horrible. This one is great. Now, I'm not an artist. I'm not an illustrator. I can't draw. I can barely write, to be honest. But I do use this to take notes. I occasionally use it to navigate iPadOS. Although more recently, I've been using it for photo editing, and it's a brilliant tool for that. I think if you've got an iPad Pro or the iPad Air, which is also compatible with the new Pencil, I think this is a bit of a no-brainer. It's not cheap, it's about $119. There's no real alternative, or there is. You can get these styluses and things, which I dabbled with in the past, but they're all rubbish. Whereas Apple's, as you would expect, is perfectly integrated. And the lovely thing about this version is that you just very easily attach it to your iPad via a little magnet, and that charges it, keeps it in place. It's quite a strong magnet. It's just very convenient, and it's a great way to take notes. It's a great way to draw. If you're an artist, if you like illustrating, if you just like doodling away, then it's a brilliant tool for the iPad for that. You can even use it for text input and that kind of stuff on iPadOS, so that there's a feature called Scribble, which I don't use, but basically in any text input field, rather than typing in, you can write your search term into Google, for example, and iPadOS will convert that into text. But the charging convenience, the size, the feel, it's got this ridge on it where it will land if it's rolling on the desk and consequently not fall off the desk. Everything about this is typical Apple. It's very nicely designed. I think if you don't mind spending that kind of money, I know it's quite a lot, I do think it's one of those no-brainer additions to the iPad Pro. The Magic Keyboard case, this is it, not attached to the iPad because the iPad's behind me. It's ridiculously expensive. $279 for the 11-inch version and $329 for this one, the 12.9-inch. And if you add that to the cost of the iPad itself, you're getting into expensive laptop territory. But for a lot of people, the iPad Pro is their laptop, their main computer. It's the thing they get stuff done with all day. And if you're a professional, if you're using the iPad Pro for a business tool, this makes a huge amount of sense. And it's actually a really good business investment. There are alternatives. You can use any, or pretty much any Bluetooth keyboard and mouse or trackpad with iPadOS. And the fact that you can now use a trackpad or a mouse in iPadOS is great. It transforms that tablet. But they're all a bit faffy. You know, you have to pair them via Bluetooth. They're either separate or they come in big cases which are a bit clunky and chunky and not very nice to use. Whereas this one, although it is heavy, it does add weight to your iPad. It's typical Apple insofar as it's theirs. They can do clever secret things with it, I'm sure. And because of that, it just works so flawlessly and it's so convenient. You just attach your iPad to it and start typing. It just works. There's no Bluetooth pairing that you have to do. It just starts working. I also love the keyboard on this, and this is coming from someone who has recently really got into mechanical keyboards. The great big clicky, chunky these. By comparison, the key travel obviously on a device like this is a lot shorter, but it's actually very, very comfortable to type on. And for quite a long time, I was using the iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard case as my daily driver for writing. The only reason that changed was because I got the M1 MacBook Air, which is just a fantastic laptop, and I just use that by default now for my mobile writing needs. But I do still occasionally return to this with the iPad because I just love the typing experience on it. The trackpad could be a bit bigger. It would be great if there were function keys on there to change your volume and your screen brightness and all that sort of stuff. But again, this is Apple. They tend to do the bare minimum and leave it at that. The other quite annoying thing with it is it gets really dirty. It's the classic iPad cover material. I'm not sure what it is, what they use with this. Quite nice out the box. It doesn't feel, it feels okay. It's a bit weird, but the biggest problem with it is you get all these smudges, I don't know if you can see on there, all these smudges and things on it, which make it look very unsightly quite quickly. Now there's a new version of this, which is white, which is compatible with the M1 iPad Pro. I've not used that yet. I love the look of that one in terms of it being white. Whether or not that one will be worse in terms of picking up dirt and scuffs and scratches and smudges and things, I don't know. But if you can look past all that stuff, and if the price, particularly if you're a business user, is something you can kind of stomach or treat as an investment, you can't get better than the Magic Keyboard case for the iPad if you want to use it as a kind of laptop. Now, I quite like my tech naked. I do have my iPhone in a case quite often, but now and again I'll take it out because I just like the feel and the fit and finish of these devices as they were intended. That's particularly the case with the iPad. I think Magic Keyboard aside, the more stuff you add to the iPad, the heavier it gets and the more unwieldy it gets. And that's partly a shame because it's such a beautiful design. I think the iPad is just stunning. It's probably one of the best devices that Apple makes in terms of design and looks. But equally, I don't want to scratch it. So I invested in a dbrand skin for the rear. I also bought the skin for the sides of it, but I took that off, it looked terrible. But the rear one is genuinely useful. And there's lots of different skins and things you can get for iPads, but dbrand are pretty much well known for being one of the best. And this was my first dbrand cover, and I can see why. They're very easy to attach. This one was very simple. You didn't have to use a hairdryer or anything. It was just a case of lining it up properly. I didn't do a very good job of it myself. That's no reflection on dbrand. I just rushed it a little bit, and as a result some of the holes were a little bit out of place, but it hasn't bothered me. The most important thing is I've had this on now for probably about 6 or 7 months. There's a couple of little dings here and there in it, but that kind of demonstrates why these are important, because those dings otherwise would have been on the iPad. Instead, they're on this dbrand skin. Now, the version I went for was the matte black version, but there's just tons of different styles and things that you can check out yourself. Go and have a look. And what I just love about having this on the back, I don't have a screen protector, by the way. The screen is as it is. But what I love about this on the back is that I can just place this on any surface and not worry about it. Like I mentioned before, I love the feel of the iPad as it is. I want to be able to carry it around the house and put it on surfaces and not think about it. And what's important to me about tech, particularly tech that is so good looking like a lot of Apple stuff, is that I can use it without worrying about it. I don't like being very delicate with things. I'm not careless, but I don't want to gingerly put it down on surfaces. I want to just put it down on the surface and not worry about it. And these dbrand skins, I think, are the best for that. This is the Lululook stand. I love it. I think it's fantastic. It is a very iMac-like stand for your iPad Pro. If you're the sort of person who uses your iPad like a computer, so perhaps you have a separate mouse and keyboard, this turns it into a desktop computer, basically. Not cheap, it's $60, but actually you're getting a lot for your money. It's made out of aluminium, very sturdy. The hinge is very, very sturdy as well. It does look a bit like an iMac. I do think it's got very much an iMac type finish to it at the bottom. And the great thing about it, you can change the orientation very easily. I do wish it clicked. It doesn't click to kind of tell you that it's level. That is a bit annoying, but not the end of the world. You can also tilt it back very far and forward. Lots of adjustability. The magnets are quite strong. They're not as strong as I'd like them to be. There's been a couple of times where I've touched the iPad a little bit too vigorously and it has moved slightly, which bothers me a little bit. That's been quite rare, thankfully. And the way that I use this stand, I keep it on my desk as much as I can. And if I'm using my iPad just to reference things, it's just nice to have the iPad at eye level and to start playing with it. I'm also trying it out for photo editing as well. That's quite an interesting way of having it like an easel, if you like. But as I mentioned a moment ago, if you are the sort of person who wants to use their iPad as their daily driver as a computer, it's a really good way of turning it into a desktop machine. There's tons of different stands that you can get for the iPad, but I just like this one. The fact it uses magnets makes it very clean. I love the tiltability on it, if that's a word. Great little buy if you use your iPad on your desk quite regularly. Now, my last iPad Pro accessory is a little bit indulgent, I freely admit. It also won't be for everyone. I completely understand that. It's the Harber London Nomad Organiser for the iPad Pro. This one is also compatible with the MacBook Air. It's £299 in the UK, which is a lot of money, but it's handmade, it's genuine leather, very nicely designed. And Harber London very kindly sent me this one to review. This review isn't sponsored by Harber. I'm not the sort of person that would normally buy this kind of thing, if I'm completely honest with you, but I love it. There's nothing wrong with being indulgent with your tech sometimes, and when you're spending a lot of money on things, you want to protect them, and if you want to protect them in a way that makes a bit of a statement, why not? But also, I love having bags for my gear. I've always bought a lot of different sleeves for iPads and for MacBooks, but I'm always looking for those sleeves and bags that allow you to fit that device in along with lots of other stuff, but do it in a way that isn't too bulky and doesn't create too much hassle for you. These Nomad organisers are brilliant for that. So they're very thin, you know, it's very light as well. If we open it up, loads of different compartments for all sorts of things. So in here, for example, I've got my pens, some headphones in there, because I sometimes forget my AirPods Pro, so it's nice to have a wired version there. Lightning charging cable. There's an AirTag buried in here as well, just in case I lose it. SD card reader, pens, more pens. I've not finished filling this up yet, actually, but there's obviously room for your cards and all that sort of thing. But in here, I can quite happily fit my iPad Air or iPad Pro and the MacBook Air. And all zipped up. Nice and safe, looks good, it's got this kind of carry handle. It's not for everyone, I completely get that. It's indulgent, it's expensive. Now Harber London make lots of other stuff. They make wallets, Apple Watch bands, briefcases. And like I say, I wouldn't normally go out and buy one of these, but I'm surprised by how much I like it and actually how much I'm using it. If you want to make an impression and you're running your own business, or you just want to look a bit smart with, you know, your iPad or your MacBook that you're carrying around, this kind of Nomad organizer, this type of thing, and there's lots of different types on the market. You don't have to go with Harber London. There's all sorts of different models and manufacturers out there that make really nice cases for the iPad Pro. It's just quite a nice way, like I say, of making a bit of a statement, of looking after your tech and just enjoying your tech. There's nothing wrong with owning something like this if it makes you happy. I highly recommend these, but definitely check out the alternatives because it is quite expensive. On the subject of accessories, I recently did a video about my favorite accessories for the AirPods Max. If you've already got a pair of those headphones or you're thinking about buying a pair and you'd love to see what kind of stuff you can get to go with them, keep watching for a link to that video. In the meantime, thanks for watching and I will catch you in the next video.